Hello, guys. All right. Welcome to chapter 14. This is our last chapter, so congratulations. Class is almost done. Um, Chapter 13, we talked about monetary policy, so this chapter covers fiscal policy. This should be a fairly short video, hoping I can squeeze it into one 10-minute segment. So basically, as I already told you in the last video, fiscal policy refers to the management of the government budget. The book explains some key terms like budget deficit and surplus and the national debt, things like that. So look those up. I'm not going to talk about them here. The book talks about the sources of revenue to the government, where the government spends its money, and things like that. So check all that out. Obviously, the government's budget partly is determined by the things the government wants to do for us and that sort of thing. But in this chapter, we're mostly thinking about the use of fiscal policy to stabilize the economy. So the government can make changes to the budget for those purposes. So that's what we're talking about here. One way that fiscal policy is used happens automatically. The government doesn't even have to do anything. There are certain things in our budgetary process that are sort of automatic things that happen. The book calls them automatic stabilizers. So the two are here. They are the progressive income tax system and our system of transfer payments. So progressive income tax refers to the fact that tax rates on income increase as you make more income. So people with higher incomes actually pay a higher rate of income tax than people with lower incomes, and the same for businesses. So the way this works is as the economy is in a good period and incomes are rising, more and more people are getting up into those higher tax rates, so more taxes are being taken out of their paychecks. And vice versa, as we go into a recession and people's incomes fall, the tax rates decrease. So that, well, I'll come back to that. Transfer payments kind of work the same way. As incomes rise and more people get jobs in good times, less and less is paid out in the form of welfare and unemployment benefits and things like that. The opposite is also true. As we go into recessions and incomes fall and jobs are lost, transfer payments increase. So basically what that does is take the ups and downs of the economy and just even them out a little bit. So instead of having the big swings of the blue curve here, you might have them just flattened out a little bit more like the red curve. So that's the role of the automatic stabilizers. It's not that they were created for that purpose, but it's just kind of a happy byproduct. So discretionary fiscal policy refers to the deliberate manipulation of the government for the purpose of stabilizing the economy, doing that same thing I just showed you of evening out the ups and downs of the economy. And basically the tools are taxes, both business and personal taxes, and government spending, which includes government purchases, actual purchases of goods and services, and transfer payments. So if we are in a recession and the government wants to speed it up, they could lower tax rates on businesses and people. That gives people more money to spend, increasing aggregate demand. And they can increase government spending for government purchases and transfer payments. So all of those things put more money out there, give more money to people to spend. So that could help bring us out of a recession. On the other hand, if we're in an inflationary period, they could raise taxes and decrease government spending, so that would kind of slow us down. So that's essentially what fiscal policy is all about. All these things basically shift aggregate demand. So that part is pretty simple. If they want to grow the economy, that's called expansionary fiscal policy. So they lower taxes and increase government spending. That increases aggregate demand. And contractionary policy is basically the opposite. Pretty simple stuff, really. Pros and cons. So think back, there was a slide about the pros and cons of monetary policy. A lot of these are kind of the opposite. So the big advantage to fiscal policy is that it is actually likely to work. You might remember that we said one of the weaknesses of monetary policy was that it might not work, because if people are really pessimistic about the future, or if they've lost their job, they're not going to go take out a loan and buy a new car or house. But if we use fiscal policy to either reduce their tax rates or give them money or give them a government job, they're going to spend that money. That actually puts money into people's hands, so you know fiscal policy is a little more likely to work. The disadvantage of fiscal policy. The big one is that the budget is passed by Congress. So fiscal policy is operated by Congress, therefore it is very slow. It can take a long time for this to go into effect. You might realize we're in a recession and it's a year or a year and a half before Congress gets around to doing anything about it. And it's going to be a political process. So there are all these partisan battles and things like that. So all three of those lags are a problem for fiscal policy. It's much, much slower. And then there's this idea of the crowding out effect. That happens when, if the government decides it wants to speed up the economy, it has to borrow money. When it borrows money, there's only a certain amount of lendable money out there in the economy. So if the government borrows up a lot of it, it sort of crowds out other investors, and therefore businesses and people maybe aren't borrowing and spending as much as they would have. So while the government's trying to speed up the economy, they crowd out certain investment, and they kind of have a little bit of a negative effect. So I think the net effect of fiscal policy is still going to be positive. It's just that this crowding out effect minimizes it a little bit. All right, I think that's really it. There's more in the book, but I think those are the more technical things that you needed to hear explained, hopefully. So that's all, folks. That's my last video, unless there's something somebody wants to hear. So I'll just say thanks for a great summer class, and let me know if you need anything.